What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look ahead to the NHL 2025 offseason. And you might be wondering to yourself, why are we jumping so far ahead? Well, with the recent news of Leon Draisaitl signing his new deal, the biggest name for the 2025 free agency market is now off the table. And after doing a bit of research, it's actually not that big of a deal because there are some talented players that are going to be available if they don't potentially sign new contracts with their teams. So today what we're going to do is we're going to list the top 10 free agents heading into the 2025 NHL offseason. Let's start off my list with a longtime Florida Panther in Aaron Ekblad. The recent first overall pick back in 2014 is going to potentially hit the free agency market if the Florida Panthers are not so interested in bringing him back. Now, the Florida Panthers just lost two key pieces to their defensive unit in Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Brandon Montour. And with Aaron Ekblad sort of regressing a little bit over the past couple of seasons, being deferred down to the second line while guys like Forsling and of course Montour really excelled in that system, I think this will be another opportunity for him to show what he's capable of and potentially earn a better contract once it becomes the 2025 offseason. Next up is a very interesting veteran forward that is sort of controversial in the league right now just based on how much he was making versus production, and that's John Tavares of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, when Tavares entered Toronto, a lot of people thought that that contract was going to work out really well for the Leafs, but unfortunately, he slowly has regressed over time and just hasn't been all that successful in Toronto. So him making around $11 million at this point has really sort of held this team back from improving in a lot of their deficient areas like defense and goaltending. But with his contract finally coming to an end, I see this ending in two different scenarios. For one, he would have to take a massive cut in his AAV if he wants to stick around in Toronto, or he's just going to have to hit the free agency market because Toronto has other guys that they need to sign like Mitch Marner, who we'll get to later. But for John Tavares, he's still a very productive center in this league and could still be an impactful second line guy for a different organization. But I can't imagine him staying in Toronto after losing the captaincy to Austin Matthews. It sort of feels like they're pushing him out. I would expect him to potentially either be traded at the deadline from Toronto or sign with a different team come free agency time. Next up is a player coming from one of the more surprising teams of the 2023-24 season, and that's Brock Boeser of the Vancouver Canucks. Coming off a career high in both goals and points with 40 on the season and 73 total, he had a fantastic season, making around $6.5 million on this deal. Well, he's entering the final year of his contract. He's 28 years old, and there's going to be a lot of teams looking to sign a player of his talents. So for the Vancouver Canucks, if Boeser has a similar year to the last, they're going to have to give him a significant raise from that 6.5, meaning he's probably going to ask for something like $8.5 to $9 million on his next contract. Now, the Canucks did just bring in some other forwards like Danton Heinen and Jake DeBrusk. So if DeBrusk has a good year, there is a chance they maybe will let Boeser walk, but I personally don't see a world where that happens. The Canucks have the space and Boeser has proven to be one of their better players. So I imagine he's going to re-sign in Vancouver and they're going to give him that sort of contract, but keep an eye out for that because there are some teams who would want to bring in his services because he's just that talented. Like I said, I see him staying in Vancouver, but keep an eye on Boeser. He's one of the top free agents heading into the 2025 offseason. Up next is easily one of the biggest playoff performers I've seen in recent memory, a recent Stanley Cup champion, and another Florida Panther that's going to be hitting the free agency market in Carter Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe has proven that he's such a valuable asset for this Panthers organization. Scoring 42 goals and then 34 goals in the past two seasons, this is going to be one of the more difficult decisions for the Panthers to make, especially with some of the other guys that they're going to potentially have to re-sign. Now, Verhaeghe is 30 years old. He's going to be looking for that final big-time contract, and while Florida does have the space for him, who knows if they're going to be able to make it work with other guys on some big-time contracts like Barkov, Tkachuk, and now Sam Reinhart. I could see them bringing him back, but he's one of the more loose cannon free agencies that I also could see going to another organization. Keep an eye out on Verhaeghe as well. Like I said, he's looking for a big payday. Who knows if the Panthers are going to be able to bring him back, especially if they go back to the Cup this year. It's going to get a little bit dicey when it comes to a lot of their free agents, which is why I have some of them on my list. Up next is the captain of the Boston Bruins and easily the biggest rat in NHL history, Brad Marchand. Now, Marchand is coming off a very team-friendly contract he signed with the Bruins, 8 years, averaging around $6.125 million a season. The Bruins captain is 36 years old now, and a couple of seasons ago, he had some hip surgery done, and now this offseason, he had 3 more surgeries that he's currently rehabbing from. So you could definitely say his body has taken a little bit of damage over the past couple of years. Now, he's hitting the free free agency market in 2025 as it currently stands, but I just don't see Boston letting him walk. They made him the captain for a reason. Clearly the boys in that locker room love him. I see them bringing him back on like a 6.125 AAV for 4 more years. That seems like the type of contract that Marchand would just sign. He sort of sets the example in that locker room, and like I said, I just don't really see any world where he's going to leave the Boston Bruins. It seems like he's going to be a Bruin for life. So right now, Brad Marchand's coming off a pretty solid season, 29 goals, 67 points. He's still very productive despite all of the stuff that he's had to do when it comes to surgeries and just rehabilitation. So Brad Marchand's probably going to re-sign with the Bruins, but he is a name that is going to be on the free agency market if he doesn't sign a deal until then. Next up is one of the bigger moves that was made in the 2023-24 offseason in Linus Ullmark, easily one of the best goalies that's going to be available. Ullmark is coming off a Vezina season back in 2022-23 and was still pretty impressive with Boston in 2023-24. But with the Bruins now having Jeremy Swayman, who also needs a contract, and the fact that he's a few years younger, it just made sense for them to move on from Ullmark this offseason. But when Ullmark was traded to Ottawa, it was rumored that he had to waive his no-move clause in order to go to the Sens, meaning he may not want to stay long-term with the organization. And who knows if Ottawa even wants to extend him long-term. Now, with all of the factors I just mentioned, the Vezina Trophy still being productive with Boston, and the potential of him being an excellent goalie this year with Ottawa, he could command a new contract of about 8 years by $8 million if he really hits the market. And there's a lot of teams that would be willing to pay a goalie of his talents that kind of money. Now, who knows if he's going to stay with the Senators or if he wants to go elsewhere, but in my opinion, he's going to be one of the top goalies hitting the market in 2025. So he's going to be one of those guys that everyone should pay attention to because somebody's going to pay him that sort of money. It just depends where. Next up is one of the best wingers that's going to be hitting the market if he doesn't sign a new deal this season, and that's Mitch Marner. Toronto has paid their forwards a lot of money. We talked about it with John Tavares, and they also just gave out new deals to both Austin Matthews and William Nylander. Well, that leaves Mitch Marner in a very interesting position. He is in his final year of his contract, making just north of $10 million, and will be looking for the same, if not more money than William Nylander. Let's just start by ignoring the Maple Leafs, and if they can even afford paying 3 forwards just for a second. Marner took a lot of heat for the Leafs' most recent playoff loss, where they were bounced in round 1 against the Boston Bruins. His defense was put into question, his work ethic was questioned, and his leadership was also questioned, all in front of a massive audience. Marner is known for being a well-rounded two-way player, and was even nominated for a Selke a few years back, so to judge him solely based on one playoff series, in my opinion, just feels a bit ridiculous. I will say, I like Marner, and I think he deserves to be paid handsomely, but I think it's time for him to take his talents elsewhere, just because I feel like he and the Leafs are just not a good match anymore. For Mitch Marner, he's at least going to be asking for the same contract as William Nylander with an AAV of at least $11.5 million, but I expect him to ask for even more, 12, 12.5, maybe even 13 when he hits the market. So for Toronto, I'm not sure if this deal is going to be worth them signing. They need to improve other areas, and if you keep running it back with sort of the same mix of players and it doesn't work, it just feels kind of silly at some point. So Mitch Marner is the biggest flight risk in my opinion when it comes to the next offseason. So I know I've been saying this a lot, but definitely keep an eye on him, because with all of the stuff that's happening in Toronto, potential of John Tavares leaving, we could see a big shakeup happening with the Maple Leafs if Mitch Marner ends up leaving. The third best free agent that's going to be available in the offseason, I hate that I'm even putting him this low, but it's Sidney Crosby, and that should just show you how deep this free agency class is going to be if he's at number 3. I feel like Crosby is a lock to basically re-sign in Pittsburgh. The team clearly values him and what he's done for the organization, and Sid just seems like a loyal guy that wants to wear the black and yellow sweater for life. The one thing about Crosby re-signing that might make fans happy is the fact that Sid is a numbers guy, and on his last deal he took less money to make the AAV of $8.7 million because that's his lucky number. So who knows, maybe he's feeling generous again and will sign something like 4 to 5 years at 8.7. Regardless of the deal though, the Pittsburgh Penguins should give him whatever he wants at this point. He's carried the organization his whole career and still to this day is their best player. But just for fun, let's hypothetically say Crosby is going to leave the organization and potentially sign elsewhere to get another opportunity to win a cup. Where would you like to see Crosby re-sign if it's not in Pittsburgh again? Next up, with Leon Draisaitl signing his new extension, Mikko Rantanen now becomes the top forward that's going to be available in the 2025 free agency class. Rantanen is in his prime at just 28 years old, coming off yet another 100-point season, scoring 42 goals. And let's be honest, who wouldn't want to play with Nathan MacKinnon some more? I have a hard time picturing a scenario where Rantanen would even leave Colorado. The team has some high-end talent on their roster and can afford to keep the star winger, so there shouldn't be any debate about this. this. But this is just a slight but. The Avalanche have had some issues lately with their depth, even with Rantanen making around $9 million. Imagine now he bumps up to about $12 or $13 million on his next deal. That's a $3 to $4 million jump that would give the Avs a solid middle six guy if they didn't pay Rantanen that upgrade. Even with the slight bump though, this one is a no-brainer. The Avs are considered contenders because of their 3 stars McKinnon, Makar, and Rantanen. And Rantanen is an important piece to this team. And if they lose one of these guys, it would be a massive hit and probably shake up the whole chemistry of the organization. The only question I really want to ask you guys is, do you think that Mikko Rantanen should make the same contract as Leon Draisaitl? I know he's a winger and they get paid less, but with him hitting the market as a 100-point player and potentially even being able to score 50 goals, he's definitely a valuable asset that some teams would pay that kind of money to. So let me know what you guys think. Do you think Mikko Rantanen could potentially make $14 million on his next deal, or do you think it should be more around 11.5, $12 million for the next one he signs? And last but not least, in my opinion, this guy is the best goalie in the world, playing for one of the most famous hockey markets in the league with the New York Rangers, and that's Igor Shesterkin. Look, the Rangers may have come up short over the past couple of seasons, but it is in no way Igor Shesterkin's fault. He has been the most constant player for this team, winning a Vezina trophy and continuing each season to put up elite numbers in both the regular season and the playoffs, all while playing on a very team-friendly deal, making $5.6 million a season, which for his level of play is a complete bargain. Now, the goalie market is strange right now. The cap is going up each year, but goalie contracts have gotten a bit smaller since the deals that Price, Vasilevsky, and Bobrovsky signed. But I feel like that's about to change with some big names hitting free agency soon, like Shesterkin. The minimum the Rangers will at least have to pay for this next deal is what Shesterkin signed with the Islanders, 8 years with an AAV of 8.25. But that's just the minimum. I would expect him to make around 10, 11, or even 12 million on the open market. So we'll have to see how negotiations go with the Rangers, because it's going to be a big time payday if they want to keep this stud in net. I think this one's a no-brainer for the New York Rangers. Sign this guy to whatever he wants. He's the reason why you've been competitive over the past couple of seasons. Just look at his numbers from the playoffs this year. He kept you in all of those series. And despite losing to the Florida Panthers, he was definitely not the problem. So give him the money he deserves. Move other guys if you have to make it work. But just know that this is going to be a tough contract to work around for the Rangers, and they're not going to be able to build out rosters like they have been over the past couple of seasons if Shesterkin is making this kind of money. So it definitely is an interesting situation when we're talking about how much goalies should be paid in the NHL today. But these are the top 10 NHL free agents that could potentially be available in the 2025 offseason after Leon Draisaitl signed his new deal. Let me know what you guys think about all of these players, how much you think that they're worth, and where you think they're going to be playing after they're done with their current contracts. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.